And I'll run through with you right quick how we do the show. Sherwin, you're going to say something?
Oh, no, I was going to tell him during the process of us arranging this opportunity to do the show, I said that Brett was the only person that's ever said the F word on our show. So the reason why I brought that up is we don't have a bleep button. We're not going to use a bleep button, but we are super happy that iTunes is still giving us a parent or a family friendly rating, so we'll keep it to bull spit and other AM radio say stuff when we can. I think Weaver said bullshit like 4 times in our drop in, so we'll have to deal with that. But whatever,
it's all good.
I'll do the best I can. I promise.
You're fine. Let's see.
It's surprisingly easier than I ever would imagine because my language off mic is atrocious.
I'll run through kind of the show notes stuff with you. What we do at the very beginning is just like all the shows have, there's a theme song play, and you may not hear it, and we may cut out on you for about 30 seconds because I'm no techno guru. That's the best I can do. And if we do, just hang on to us, and we'll come back to you, and you'll hear us and everything, and then you'll hear us intro you, and then we'll just kind of get started. We do a segment called "What You Drinking," so we talk about what's filling our cups at that time, and then just going into just general questions from fans, talking about last week's race, what different things that we saw, really just BSing and having fun and telling stories. More questions from the audience, and then talking about next week at Kansas, and always like to have a competitor's perspective in that, so it'll be cool. And then closing out after that, and anything else you want to talk about. So feel free, if you find yourself in a long-winded story, just keep on trucking. We have no time frame or nothing else. We're not going to have to cut to commercial or anything like that.
We don't have a 30-second bell.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For the hot take.
Mm-hmm.
You can take as long as you want.
Yeah.
That's right. So we got the PETM.
No Jason Schultz over here in our room.
No.
And
no
then,
dinger.
Yeah. Once we're done, we'll just let you roll, and then, like I said, after that, we're gonna just drop in an interview with Matt Weaver. You know Weaver, don't you?
Yep.
Yeah. He said y'all have fun with Freddie.
We run parallel lives.
Parallel lives, good way to put it. Yeah, he said y'all have fun with Freddie. He's one of the good guys. So.
Oh, he lied to you guys already.
He's texting him and telling you so that.
He's probably listening in right now going, "Oh, I got them good. Wait till they start this." All right. Well, with that, we ready to go, Sherwin?
Why not?
All right. Let me make sure I've got
You said we're already on YouTube, right?
Yeah, we are.
Goodness gracious.
Sure are. There's
fired off.
Several folks listening in now, so we might as well get started. Freddie, you ready?
Freddie, you ready?
Ready, Freddie?
Absolutely.
All right, here we go.
Yeah. Never heard that before.
Right, I'm sure.
Yeah,
they have a whole song.
Super original, I guarantee you.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Recording now. Welcome, y'all. That's right. This is the Pregame Engineer Tailgate Mayor Racing Podcast, episode number 166. It's Wednesday, October 17, 2018. I'm Tailgate Mayor Rusty Wallace. I'm in the PTM Podcast studio with Pregame Engineer Andrew Sherwin. What's up, dude?
I think we already did like an entire podcast, and we're about to do another one, and they're going to be the same podcast.
We got podcast on top of podcast, podcastception, and a great guest on tonight. Before we get started, y'all know what the deal is. This podcast is sponsored by you. That's right. You go to patreon.com/PETM, join the What You Drink Club for as little as $1 a month, and get your free koozie. The best part is, every cent this year, we are donating to sponsoring drivers. So join the PETM posse today. Be a part of the sport you love. Sherwin, this list got long. We're going to try it. Here goes. This week's show is brought to you by our official sponsors at the $5 and up per month level. That is Laura Henshaw, Aaron Bearden, Robert Keplinger, Tony Saul, Kobe McClam, Eric Kepner, Ryan Keeper, Marilyn Best, Patrick Cleary, Jeff Brown, Brandon Crowell, Kathleen McDonald, Stacey Wright, Brandon Carl, Billy Workman, Reepka Porter, Jumpy Bob and Les Miller, Tommy Witt, Mark Wiley, Julie Bosley, John Pearson, Eddie Greer III, Yunker Motorsports, and Jason Rudd. Holy cow. That's as long as it's ever been. How about that?
Well, that's good.
Thank all of y'all for being sponsors. Thank everybody for hanging out and having fun. Sherwin, sometimes we call ourselves a fan podcast all the time. Sometimes we're kind of a podcast, right?
Right.
Tonight, I'm a fan.
Well, I mean, don't just say I.
We. Yes, we. I shouldn't
Top Gun.
Go there. We, the royal we. I've got my Bubba hat on. Obviously, been a fan autographed. Been a fan for a long time, and tonight we have Bubba Wallace's spotter, Mr. Freddie. Sorry,
he's already laughing at us.
Freddie Kraft. No, this is awesome.
This is how this goes.
I'm a little bit I'm a little bit starstruck already. Here's the guy that gets to hang out with Bubba all the time, and this is pretty cool. Freddie, how's it going, man?
It's great. How you guys doing?
We're doing awesome. We've been hanging out for well over an hour now, so y'all know what that means with us. Freddie, let's kick it off the way we do every one of these. What are you drinking on tonight?
Right now, I'm actually pretty lame. I just got home, but I'm gonna have to go mix some up to catch up to you guys. Apparently.
All right. Well, we do a good job of running our mouths, so if you need to run off and go make you a drink, we'll find a segment that will get you away from the mic for a minute.
Sherwin,
I have to go find Brett's friend Tito.
There you go. Ain't nothing wrong with that. I've got Jim Beam has this Atlanta Braves bottle now, and me and Sherwin were discussing do they label this at the distillery or at the bottling place, or do they label this later on? And then even the top is blue and has all this the blue and red stuff. So we're thinking it's probably labeled at the bottling plant and then shipped off here. So I can't imagine everybody does that. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is neat.
Yeah.
And then I picked up something I'd never seen before in the whiskey section. You know how I am with visual marketing.
Yes.
So I saw this old camp, and then it said peach pecan whiskey and has a wolf with trees on it.
Uh-huh.
And I was thinking about Hangover and the shirt. And all
yeah,
that.
yeah, okay.
And I was like, yeah, this is coming home with me.
So Sherwin's in the pecan crowd, it sounds like. Freddie, what is your preferred pronunciation
pecan.
of the word?
Pecan.
Oh, pecan. Okay.
I'm a pecan guy.
Okay.
All right. Well,
I think I'm pecan as well. It's one of those, now that you think about it, you're like, what do I say? I can't remember. I think I say pecan or something stupid. I say something that nobody else says or something.
Yeah, I know that I say it weird. My mom says it differently. She's from southeast Georgia, and then her family, they say it a little different. Pretty sure my mom says it the way English is supposed to be spoken, since she taught English.
Yeah, proper.
But I say pecan. I don't. That's just me.
Well, who knows? Well,
being from Long Island, I'm pretty sure that's the first time I've ever said pecan in my life. Anyway, so I don't know. I don't know the test to come up.
Well, Freddie, so we know you're very familiar with podcasts and such, and being the preferred co-host of Door Bumper Clear, according to Brett. Brett's been on the show and stuff. What's it like being the preferred co-host over there?
Well, it's exciting. I got the opportunity to fill in with Brett a couple times, and obviously Brett are good buddies. And then any chance we get to take a shot at DJ is always fun. So it's just, we kind of just get together and shoot the stuff like we do every time, on the weekends at the bar or something like that. So it's not much different.
That's exactly how we got started on this show was, hey, we're sitting here at the bar talking about NASCAR. Why don't we record ourselves? And maybe somebody will listen, and maybe we'll get to talk to cool people. And next thing you know, here we are with, Spotter Brett and Freddie and
those were some real stretchy maybes that have turned into realities.
Yeah.
We have to constantly remind ourselves that the reason why these things happen is because you guys are so generous with your time. And there's this access now that we never had before where you can do this internet radio show, and it's not it's not necessarily scheduled. Now we're doing a live YouTube version of it where people are actually sitting in front of their smart TVs and their devices, and they're watching what we're doing, and they're watching me look stupid and fat. But otherwise, this is a really cool space to operate in.
Yeah, yeah. So, Freddie, we got to start here. If you're following along in the show sheet, which we don't hardly have anything but like 3 bullet points because ragtag couple of people here, but scrolling down a bit, I got to know this one. So you got to tell us. I say you got to tell us, like I'm demanding something, but I would love to hear something about Brett that we probably shouldn't know, but maybe that he wouldn't be pissed and wouldn't never come on the show again or something.
Let's see. One thing I like to give Brett some grief about is when he starts drinking. Like we partake in some beverages here and there,
once or twice,
occasionally, like every day. Yeah, and Brett thinks he's invisible when he's drunk. I don't know if that happens to everybody or it's just him. But yeah, like we were out in Nashville, and all of a sudden he just breaks out into a clog dance that I've never seen before. The country music, which I don't think anybody's ever seen before. And I'm like, man, you realize people can see you right now? Like, I think you need to relax a little bit. Like, calm down.
Well, I heard that he could clog, and that's a special skill set for a dude to have.
And
I mean, he can clog. I'll give him credit. He's a hell of a clogger. But I don't know any other cloggers to really compare it to. So, I mean, that might not be good information.
I remember Junior putting together, like, a Snapchat video, not over Snapchat. It's not where I saw it. I saw it on Twitter, but like it was like a really fast version of Brett doing some kind of cloggy type dance. It was pretty funny.
That is,
yeah,
that's awesome.
I mean, it's pretty interesting to say the least.
That's awesome. We used to go to like the country fair or something, and the cloggers were always those the middle school dance troupe cloggers or whatever.
I remember Sawyer Brown. He did a little bit of clogging on stage.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay.
He would dance around.
Well,
like a
the
fool
difference
a little
is
bit.
like none of those. Spider Brett isn't like the clogging body type. I wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly right.
It's like me clogging, I guess is what I'm trying to
5'8", 230 is not the preferred clogging size.
Love you, Spider Brett.
He just randomly goes into this anytime anywhere we're at. Like he's sitting there having a good time drinking. Next thing you know, he's clogging, he's beatboxing. He's a different character for sure.
I love it. So how about something about Bubba? How about that one? Anything that he'll never come on the show anyway.
Well,
and just about everything you could think of is already out there. So what's not out there?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. He's everything you know is pretty much everything there is to know about Bubba. He's one of the rare people that is, however you see him, that's how he is all the time. Well, he doesn't really leave much to the imagination.
Well, and he's so active on social, and I mean, I think I've seen him on on Twitch playing Fortnite and stuff, right? I mean, he's playing video games and stuff. So, yeah.
Oh yeah,
cool dude. Well, with that, let's see. Sherwin, you had a question. Regarding TJ. Go for it.
Oh, yeah. So what is it that TJ doesn't understand about the word parenting versus the word babysitting?
Well, I mean, you guys listen to the podcast. You already know TJ's not very bright. So, I just don't think. I mean, unless he's getting paid to do it, I think that's pretty much a definition of babysitting versus parenting. So maybe his wife's paying him. Who knows? But he's probably the only person in the country that thinks watching his kids is babysitting, his own kids.
Right. You need to tell Casey to continue to constantly give him crap about watching his own kids babysitting. Now that's called being a dad, bro.
I
signed up for it like 3 times.
You'd think you'd have it by now.
I mean, if he would ever leave his hotel room on the weekends and come out with me and Brett, that would be babysitting. But not staying home with your kids.
Yeah. So with that, why don't we talk about a little bit of racing, Sherwin? Why not?
Oh, is this a racing podcast?
Yeah, we might as well talk a little bit about racing.
Maybe it's just a podcast where we talk to racers.
Yeah, talk to racers about racing. Let's talk about Dega a bit. I'm curious from the competitor standpoint, what were your thoughts on that race overall, Freddie?
Honestly, it was a pretty crazy race the way Stewart-Haas was able to just basically dominate the race. Once they had 4 fast cars that were really trimmed out and were able to stay up front the whole time. It would have been interesting to see if they would have got stuck back in the pack a little bit. But, I mean, them guys were able to dominate the race. And, guys, we tried to, lay back and make runs and form groups to make runs at them and just couldn't really make anything happen. And the way that 4 of them stayed committed to each other was really impressive. And they dominated the race and would have finished 1, 2, 3, 4 if that late caution didn't come out.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I thought, there was, for myself, there was a little bit of frustration in, towards the end when it looked like, Fords and Toyotas and Chevys all need to be on the horn together and say, can we just get in a line? Because that's the only way we're catching these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't really willing to do that, and I don't know if they even could have.
Sherwin, I silently broke my boycott. And I think Sherwin even tweeted it out. He said, "Well, I'm on Diver on this race, and Rusty always boycotts watching Talladega." So, but there I was by myself, drinking my drink, and not texting anybody, not tweeting out nothing, just drinking a cold drink, and watching that race, and I actually enjoyed it. I had fun. I had not seen a race in 2 weeks because last week me and the wife were out in Southern California going to roller coaster parks, and then we went on a hot air balloon ride and did all this crazy crap. So I came back, and that was kind of my wind down at the end of the week. So, boy, that was fun. The drama, I guess everything going on. I don't know. I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I had fun.
The science behind it is what, really entertained me. Like the fact that 4 cars could just drive away from the field in a cup race. I was like, what in the are they up to?
Yeah. What do they got going on? So
yeah, I mean, basically all it was they just like you can trim your car out to make it go fast and drive worse, and they took the risk that they made their cars completely trimmed out as much as they could to go as fast as they could, that nobody could touch them and get them back in the pack, and they were right. So I'm sure next Daytona we'll all have cars that drive like crap because we'll all be doing the same thing they did there.
Now, from the competitive standpoint, because we've been saying a few times now that Dega is the one that now seems like the total question mark race, whereas when it comes to supers, and Dega, not Daytona, but Dega feels like the racer's race, the short track of super speedways.
You say Daytona or Dega?
So Dega is the more predictable, I guess, now, where the cars are in line. There's enough blocking there. Whereas Daytona is the right around for 180 laps, and then chaos ensues.
Yeah.
So from the competitive standpoint, do y'all see that same sort of thing?
I think with the second race more so, just because of the fact that you got guys that are in the playoffs that can't really risk wrecking. So some of the guys that are a little more aggressive in the first race and Daytona are maybe a little more conservative. The Brad Keselowskis, the Joey Logano's, the guys that need points. They might not make the same move they made all the time. You got Ricky Stenhouse was really aggressive in Daytona. He was he wasn't as aggressive here because he didn't need a win. It didn't wasn't going to affect his playoff. So I just think that race, the second race at Talladega overall, has been pretty tame lately, last couple of years, just because of the fact that guys are afraid to wreck and other guys are just kind of riding it out and seeing what they're getting ready to do.
Well, you know what was weird to me, and it could absolutely be related to temperature or what kind of tire Goodyear brought, but Talladega, it felt like the most of the last, call it handful of years, 5-6 years, the high line is where people rode all day. And then the low line was the place that you had to go to try to make some scratch. This past weekend, the low line was where everybody was at all race, or I guess maybe you call it 4 feet off of the line. But nobody could do anything outside. There was nothing going on up there.
Yeah, it was really just a product of us trying to keep up with the Stewart-Haas cars. They were so fast and running the bottom that if you tried to move off the bottom, they would drive away from you. You've seen a couple times where they had a 6-7 car break with all the Fords, and it was just a matter of you had to stay on the bottom and stay in their lane just to try to prevent them from getting away.
That makes sense.
How in the world can you keep up with everything going on? I think we've asked spotters before this, and I still am not sure I 100% get it, because you'll be, it's inside. I can't do it off the top of my head. But you've got somebody. Yeah, I mean, 3 wide, inside, outside. Okay, you're clear inside. Blah 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 blah. And it seems like you're talking the entire time. And then the next thing I hear is leader's doing this, and this other guy's, Kurt is running the high line ahead, and blah blah blah, and he's making pretty good laps over here. I'm like, how in the hell do you see all that while you're still trying to run traffic? Is that are there tracks that are? I mean, I imagine there's tracks that are more conducive to being able to see what's going on everywhere, but does it feel like chaos at a track like this, or at a road course race or something?
No, honestly, the plate races obviously are more in depth of what's going on around you, but it's still as crazy as it looks on TV. It's still fairly tame, especially middle to beginning parts of the race. You kind of know that everybody's going to stay in line. If you've got a guy like Jamie McMurray behind you, he's really aggressive. So, if he's behind you, you got to be on your toes a little bit. But if there's most of the guys you can trust around you, all right, everybody's kind of settled in here, so you can kind of bounce around and look and see what other guys are doing. 1.5 miles, it's kind of easy. You just make sure you guys not racing anybody and just kind of peek around, see where guys are running at. Short tracks are easy for me. That's where I grew up. So, the plate races can get a little bit hectic, especially towards the end. You go from spotting kind of, all right, you got 1 guy out there, 2 out there, whatever, and then at the end it's like you're blocking every lane, go this way, go that way, go that way, go this way. It's just it gets pretty hectic the last 10 laps or so. But before that, it's not too bad.
Gotcha. So we've got let's talk about some playoffs, Sherwin.
Playoffs?
Playoffs. Let's get into it here. Eddie Greer asked us, and I'm going to try to summarize this thing right here, because I sort of had a similar note myself, but. Almirola moving on, Chase Elliott moving on. We had Blaney win in the Roval, and the big 3, they've only won 1 time so far in the playoffs.
Playoffs
our this almost seems stupid to even ask, but are Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. in trouble? I'm not. That feels like creating drama, but. Are they in?
Don't you be simpleton media.
Yeah, right. I'm pandering here. Is Martin Truex in trouble right here with the cut line? He's right on the cut line or whatever.
Truex actually is in trouble.
Truex might be in a little bit of sweating a little bit on this, but what's the? I'll put it this way to you, Freddie. What's the feeling in the garage right now with those guys winning, and really, I mean, I feel like we're going to see we're definitely going to see a big name get eliminated, if not multiple here, that we might have expected to move on from this round. What's the feeling in the garage? Is it tense, or how's it going?
Well, I'm sure for the guys that are on the bubble there, your Keselowski, Blaney, guys like that, it's real tense for them now, because I mean with 5 to go, they're on the cut line, 2 or 3 points to the good, and now they're looking almost at a must-win, 20 points back. So I'm sure them guys are tense up. For our standpoint, we're just going out. It's just another Sunday afternoon for us.
Yeah.
But them guys won. Like you want to call them maybe wild card races. Blaney winning the Roval, and this week was a wild card, and you've seen Stewart-Haas dominate at Dover with Harvick. So they still got the speed. It's just they've run into issues. I think Martin had a problem this week with, all race long, really couldn't get his car to handle properly. He thought something was broken. So, they're just kind of running into a little bit of issues, but that's why you dominate the regular season and stack up them stage points and stuff, which Brett hates. But, that'll probably carry them guys to the next round unless somebody else wins this week.
I really like that you mentioned that, the whole dominate the whole regular season and stack up these points to help you in the playoffs. At what point is there going to be enough noise that, hey, you're supposed to, playoffs, you're just supposed to get to. Then you're supposed to perform. In NFL, you just get to the playoffs, and then you get opportunities to win games. Same thing with the Major League Baseball, NBA, everything else. I wonder when we're going to start hearing that friction, that noise about playoff points getting to carry over, and the work that you did in April,
mm-hmm.
helping you get to November. Now, I personally don't have a problem with it, but at some point there's going to be some friction.
I think we've friction. Yeah.
We we touched about this on DBC last week, me and Brett, because we had been talking about it all weekend at Dover, and I don't know what the answer is because it come about because 2 years ago Martin dominated the Truck Series. Martin dominated the Cup Series, and I believe William Byron dominated the Truck Series. And both in like the second to last round of the playoffs blew a motor, and were out of the playoffs basically just for one race. One bad race took them out and ruined the whole season. So they try to come up with a way that if you have such a great year, you get a benefit from it. I just like we talked about. I don't know that you should be able to go from barely making it to the next round to right back as the point leader. So I don't know where the happy medium is, and I know a lot of people just say, well, give them points in the first round, and then that's it. But you still would have, I guess, that's probably the most fair way to do it. But it's still, you'd still burn a guy like Harvick that's dominated this year. If he goes out and has mechanical failures 2 races in a row, does that really throw away your whole season?
Yeah, well, I would tell Martin and William that maybe they should drink a little less next time and avoid them blowing motors.
No, so for me, I'm not sure if I endorse what I'm about to say, but
you're still going to say it.
I'm going to say it. It seems like obviously playoffs and all this stuff. Playoffs. They're NASCAR is trying to be more stick and ball ish, right? And if we're emulating that, look, if Aaron Rodgers gets knocked out in the first minute of the game, hey, sorry, you're probably not going to win, right? So, I guess I can be aligned with the fact that, well, if you blow 2 motors in the playoffs, then you're probably not going to,
Well, I think
even
the
if it's not your fault.
And I like the way the system is right now.
I do too. That's why I said I'm not sure if I endorse what I'm about to say.
But it's like it would be like if in the whole season, like if every time you beat somebody by more than 2 touchdowns, you've got like a point that gets added to your score in the playoffs, to where like like, yeah, man, we lost by 3, but we had 5 playoff points, so we actually won.
Sounds like soccer.
Yeah.
Point differential. And we love soccer.
So chalk us up as both guys that we kind of dig the way the system works now. I love you being rewarded because for 26 races you had to bust your ass. And I love the fact that teams are getting rewarded for that because I think it's important to do so.
I think it's important to have some consistency, and I've already bitched about it on a previous podcast that we're changing up the package again next year and all this stuff. Where I'm not sure if we've talked to. No, we did talk to a competitor about that. Let's give Freddie the floor on that one, since we're talking about it. What are your thoughts on the car changes for next year?
The 900-foot spoiler and the tapered spacer.
Like I said the other night on the other podcast, like it's way too early to have feel like an informed opinion. I think that it's going to create more track racing for short periods of time. I think restarts will be more exciting. I think at some of the places, maybe in Michigan they'll stay packed up. California, I think a place like Indianapolis or Pocono, they'll pack up for a little while, then it'll get strung out. The good cars will still be good cars. So, I'm slightly pessimistic, but I'm hopeful that it does something to change the racing around. The point that I keep going back is, we have racers in our cars, in our garages, crew chiefs. These guys come from racing backgrounds. They're real racers, and they wanted the exact opposite of this package. And why we're going the other way, I'm not really sure. But if it's a cost thing, if it's trying to level the playing field for everybody else, hey, that would help my team. So I'm not going to knock it.
Well, so I think there's really only one thing I would poke and prod at this point, even though we could poo-poo this idea all day long. It doesn't matter anymore, to your point. We haven't seen it happen. We don't know how they're going to evolve it as the day goes or the season goes on next year. The thing that I don't understand as a scientist and an engineer and a race fan is Why are we doing this at Atlanta, and why are we doing it at California? They're the two best racing surfaces in the sport. Why are we doing this?
Yeah. That was one of our points. Is, I think the owners and the teams voted on not having to build different race cars. They didn't want to go into that cost of they have to build completely different race cars. So that's going to factor into it. I don't understand why we're running a tapered spacer at them places. I thought, like you said, Atlanta is one of the best races of the year. California is one of the best races of the year. Darlington's a great race. Places where the tire wears out, and we go back to this all the time and say the best races we have are where the guys spend time off throttle. If they have to lift and actually drive the race cars, that's the best racing we have on this sport. And now we're going the exact opposite direction and trying to make it where they're almost wide open everywhere, or trying to maximize throttle time. So it's yet to be seen, and hopefully it'll evolve. Like, I'm sure they're not done. They'll make adjustments to it as we go, race by race. But I'm fully on board with, I don't know why we're doing it at tracks where the racing is already great.
Yeah, I think I've said a lot that what we need to maximize is not the speed, the high speed, and not the low speed, but the distance between the two. Mm-hmm. I don't care if we don't go 200 miles an hour. That's not important to me. What's important to me is that if you enter the corner at 190, in the center, you ought to be about 145 or 150. Mm-hmm. That way you get to choose how you exit based on how you want to put the power down.
Yeah. If it's 190 all the way around with the foot pegged to the floor, what are we doing?
Well, so we got a new data point this past weekend. It doesn't even matter if you slow everybody down and put them in this box you think they can run in. A team figured out how to run away from the pack.
Yeah. Well, and so something interesting too. So Jeff Gluck released all of his data from his poll, right? And y'all know Gluck's been on the podcast multiple times. He's and
scheduled for next week. Yeah. I don't know if he's still going to be able to do that with his brand new baby girl,
with the baby and all that. But maybe he's bored sitting at home and wants to talk to us for a little bit. But he released all his data, and so me being like a data nerd, I went in, I captured all the data, I created all these crazy graphs and everything else because I was bored at one point and decided to have some fun. I should
analytical data's fun.
I should tweet some of it at him. It's kind of fun because you're cross-referencing the time of race against percentages of yes with was it the first race or second race. It's kind of cool stuff as a data nerd. But one of the most, the easiest, most interesting one, but the easiest one to pull is exactly what you're saying, Sherwin. All the road courses were number one right now, and then followed by it's exactly as you might expect, except the super speedways were ahead of the quote unquote cookie cutters.
Yeah. Well, Chicago was really good this year, but that was an anomaly.
Yeah. So. Well, let's go with another question for Freddie. Freddie, how'd you get to the point where you're spotting Bubba Wallace, and do you ever look back and go, how in the hell did I get here, and what's going on?
It was kind of a whirlwind, actually. I grew up in New York or Long Island, Riverhead Raceway, my home track, and my dad was multi-time champion there in the figure eight division, and so I grew up going to the racetrack my whole life. And so when I turned 15 or 16, I started racing figure eight, and I was terrible. I wasn't very good at all.
You said you started racing figure eight.
Child, and you're racing like damn near bumper cars.
So, no, these are pretty legit, unfortunately, because it costs a lot of money. So I learned my lesson the hard way, expensively. So from there, I just decided, when I was growing up, I would tell my dad everything he did wrong. You know what I mean? And Dad, you should have done this. You should have that. You could have got this guy here, whatever. And he wanted to kill me on a weekly basis. So when I grew up, I was like, man, maybe I'll start spotting for these guys. So I started spotting for a couple of my buddies. It went pretty well. I ended up going to the Whalen Modified Tour. Started helping a couple of buddies there, and going from there, Mike Herman Jr. actually spots for Ricky Stenhouse. Now Bubba actually called him. They were family friends. They had a mutual acquaintance that so they had called Herm to spot for Bubba. He already had a gig with, I believe, Ty Dillon in the K&N series. So they called me to do it, or Herm told them to call me to do it. So we went. They called me up. The first race was that weekend in Greenville Pickens. Bubba was all of 15 or 16 years old, and we went down there and won the first race. And it's been pretty much same thing since day one. We've been together ever since. I think 1 year we were separated when he went to Gibbs to run K&N and a couple of Xfinity races. But other than that, I've been with him ever since.
I didn't realize that it had been that long. That's awesome.
Yeah.
How does Bubba like to be spotted? You hear guys that like to hear the times or want to hear different things. What's unique about him? Or if it's not unique, just what does he like to do?
It's pretty much standard issue. He likes a lot of information, and I always call him a little brother, and he will get. I can always tell when he's getting mad, and I will sometimes egg him on and make it worse, just for the fact that to get him to yell at me and take his mind off of whatever else is going on. But it's just like I said, standard issue. Basically, minimal information about what's going on around the back of him or anything like that. He's got all that under control. Just kind of helping him out with lines and stuff like that. And he'll get mad at me if I tell him too many times he's run the wrong line. He'll spout off at the mouth a little bit here and there. But I mean, if you don't have that relationship where you don't think the guy is telling you everything and you don't have complete trust in him, and you could just be out there and feel like you're not getting any help. You know what I mean? I'd rather give him help and let him yell at me and bitch and moan about he's doing everything he can and whatnot. But it's just the way it goes, and it's way more. I've done a couple guys in Cup now, and this is obviously the most comfortable I've been all year.
It sounds like it's part spotter, part psychologist in a way. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure with Bubba it is. Yeah, no doubt about it.
I believe that based on what I've heard on the radio, what we see on Radioactive and some of those other weekly programs and stuff, and how his personality works and how everybody else's personality works too. Blake, for instance, I mean, Blaney gets fired. A dude is cool as the other side of the pillow out of the car. Inside the car, if somebody hits him, he loses his flipping mind. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's what you want, though. That's what you want in a competitor. You want a guy you don't want a guy that's just going to get, something goes wrong and he goes, oh, well, maybe next week. Him and Bubba are really similar in a lot of ways, and that's one of them. Something goes wrong, it could be the smallest thing, but, they're going to harp on it and be pissed off, and that's what you want. That's what I want in the guy that's driving my car.
Well, I can remember being in the garage at Michigan for the first race and knowing some folks that used to be tied to the LFR team and walking up to them after a practice and seeing a guy say, you know what, we ain't got a driver problem. We got a team problem because Casey had climbed out the car and just spiked his earbuds and was pissed.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, that's a competitor right there.
Yeah, yeah. All right, we're going to do – I think this is going to turn into the PTM spotter challenge. Spotter challenge right here.
All right.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, no, go to your bar and drink all the liquor. No. It's
Did you make a drink yet, by the way?
Been there, done that.
Spotter Brett did it. Come on. No, we did ask Spotter Brett this one, and it came from a listener, and I would have to go back and see which listener asked it, but it was the most perfect question for the spotter. Here it is. Let's say that for an entire race you have exactly 5 words. What are the 5 words that you are going to use in order to spot that race?
Let's see. Green.
Hmm?
Look out. Drop the net. Is that 6 words?
that we'll allow that. That's maybe a word / phrase. Drop the net.
I gotta get that drop the net in there now after Bubba scared the hell out of everybody. In, Pocono.
Oh yeah.
Pocono.
Oh.
Whew. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we should say 5 phrases.
Sure, 5 phrases. That works. 5 phrases. Okay. So we got
that are all dedicated to the same.
For a 5 phrases, I definitely got to go green flag. Good job. We'll get him a good job. We'll get him a quit your bitching.
I think we ran out, didn't we? Green flag.
We
dropped the net.
Drop the net. Quit your bitching.
We had look out.
Look out.
Shut up and drive comes up a lot, stuff like that.
Shut up and drive. All
Shut
right,
up and drive.
Screw inside or outside or anything like that. Look out. Shut up and drive.
We don't need any. They've got mirrors for all that stuff. They don't need us. They got mirrors.
So we asked that question of Brett, and his response was,
I think he said green.
He said green, inside.
He said inside and
outside, clear.
Yep.
And something that rhymes with truck.
Yeah.
Except for he said it.
It was perfect.
It must have been Buck, right? He was talking about getting paid after the end of the day.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to get paid. No problems. Sherwin, you said we're going to talk about the Pocono deal. Talk about it.
Oh, man. So give us your perspective on seeing Bubba shoot off down there. And, I know the sounds of the car and understanding when you're on and off throttle and when you should or shouldn't be on or off throttle. When Bubba tears off down there and everybody knows that his brakes have failed, what's going through your mind?
Yeah, it was the most sickening thing that has happened to me in a long time. I was, unfortunately, when I was back spot modified racing, we were involved in a crash where a friend of mine lost his life. And it was a similar deal. They just drove off in the corner and just, a couple guys got together. One guy got a flat, and they just, took off from the wall, and you knew it was going to be a bad wreck. Before they got there, you're like, oh, this isn't going to be good. And unfortunately, that's what happened that night. So, we knew he had a small brake issue the lap before, and I watched him go down the front stretch. And Pocono is kind of a weird place where you can't really see turn one that well. So, you're kind of leaning over the railing, looking down there to see him. And all of a sudden, I see him just dart to the left across the infield, and I'm like, oh, man. It just takes your breath away for however, I'm watching it, just holding my breath, waiting for him to land, bouncing through the infield. He finally lands on the racetrack, and luckily when he landed it, I think the rear brake must have been hung up a little bit, and it got a turn to where it just hit at the right angle where he didn't hit head on. And I teed up instantly, and he answered me instantly, but it was still the longest 1 second of my life waiting for releasing the button and waiting for him to say that he was okay. It was a sickening feeling, and it's something that I hope never happens again.
Yeah, and so forgive me for not knowing exactly which track it was, but didn't he have another similar type issue recently where he's like, well, I kind of knew what to do this time?
Yeah, we had it at Indianapolis. We had an issue, totally unrelated. Something happened. A lug nut got up in there, we think, and maybe did some damage to the rotor, and eventually the rotor broke. And it was just the same kind of thing, he's just driving down the back straightaway. And this time it was actually the opposite, where it was the rear rotor, so it actually instantly spun him out instead of, just kind of hanging the car wide open. So he actually just kind of held on for dear life and got out of the car and was okay. But same thing, at Indianapolis, we talked about a little bit, there's a lot of trees back there for the golf course, so you kind of lose them through the trees. So we go back there, and we're fine. There's really nobody around us. And then all of a sudden, he comes out the other side of the trees, and he's bouncing through the grass again. And I'm like, son of a gun, not again. We're going to do this again. And it was whatever, the week later, 2 weeks after the first time. So I was like, man, but luckily he got stopped, and then some moron came in there 35 seconds later and plowed into us. But, it wasn't fun watching that all over again.
I'm glad you just said that, because when we watch that on TV and when I listen to you guys on the radio, and I'm usually listening to Brett just because I think he's hilarious, but when that happens, when somebody does plow into there, 35 seconds later is what it feels like, because that's what it looks like on TV too, because we all sort of lose track of time. It's way too late. What in the hell is causing that?
We had a deal in the Xfinity car last year where we had spun out. I think it was Bristol, and we spun out, and I'm like, all right, whatever, we spun. Get it ready. I'm talking to him like, we're fine. We don't got any. And all of a sudden I go, Oh God! And because I've seen somebody come and like we're done wrecking. We're sitting there for 5 seconds, probably longer than that. And all of a sudden, like it's like, oh, hang on, here comes another idiot. Like, so I have to tell him, all right, hold on, guy's getting ready to blast you again, and it just takes you out of the race, but you don't have any damage, and your car's destroyed. So I don't know that place. Indianapolis, like, not that I give them a break, but it's a tough place to spot. You can't see the car a lot, and depending on where you're standing on the pagoda. But still, like, the driver should know, all right, there's some stuff going on in front of me here. Maybe I just get out of the gas pedal is a good idea.
Well, so, and I know Rusty's ready to talk, and I keep interrupting him. I'm going to let him talk in just a second. But why is it that the person who usually comes flying in 35 seconds late to a wreck and creates more chaos is the person who probably can least afford to wreck his car?
I think you answered the question.
Yeah, well, it's the reason why they're driving that car, because they don't have any common sense.
You had mentioned that Indy's hard to spot at. My follow-up question: what is the hardest track to spot at?
Probably Pocono is my least favorite. They're not. I don't think any of them are really hard per se. It's just some of them are like Pocono. Like I said, you have a hard time seeing turn one. The race kind of gets strung out. So it's kind of monotonous where you're really not racing anybody all day long. You're kind of always by yourself. So that's kind of one that really challenges your ADD at times. And Indy's another one. I don't like any of the road courses. Like, anywhere where we aren't completely in control ourselves is not a big race for a spotter. Like, you want to be the guy, like, that makes all the calls. So, like, a road courses or Indianapolis where you got to split it with somebody else, it's difficult to let that control go.
Well,
makes sense.
He answered my follow-up. I was like, is there ever a time where you're like, you know what, I think I can check my email on the phone, see what's going on Twitter or something right now, or Facebook or something. This is kind of strung out. Ain't nobody around. I can just make something up. Are you? I should ask maybe a different or a better option. Is there ever a time when it's green flag racing that you're not watching the racing going on? Maybe either wheeling and dealing back there or doing something else. Is there a time where you're like, hey Bubba, ain't nobody in front of you or behind you? I'll be back in a minute.
No, you don't really get that far away, but there's times where you got to go there's 40 of us standing up there from one end of the roof to the other. So if I'm running, we're in front of, say, Brett, and Brett's standing at the other end of the roof, I've got to run down there and let him know that I'm getting ready to pit, or if I've got an issue going on that he needs to look out for. So you'll be running back behind the guys and really can't see your car at that point. You kind of try and peek through the heads as you're running down there. But, you kind of take your eyes off the car, but that's pretty much the only time. A lot of these guys, I've never done it before, and I don't think I ever will. But, like, under caution, they leave and go to the bathroom, and I can't even do that. So there's no way I can take my eye off on the green. Brett does it, like, every caution. He's gone. Clint, he's like, all right, Clint, you're on your own. I'll be back in a minute. Like, where are you going? Didn't you just go to the bathroom? Like, I don't know what he's got going on down there.
Well, so piggybacking that, knowing that Brett has let along just enough information on door bumper clear to let us know that he probably punched somebody in the face up on the spotter stand. What at some point in time and got in trouble for it. What is the most aggravated you've ever got with a spotter? What was the situation? Who were you spotting for, and who was the spotter?
And you don't have to name any of those names, but
you can just say car numbers. We'll figure it out.
So, to be honest, I don't remember who the driver was. I was spotting for Bubba. It was an Xfinity race. It's probably 4 or 5 years ago. And we are coming down pit road, a green flag pit stop, and there's a car that don't even belong on the racetrack. It's like the 13 Xfinity car, who's like just normally if he's on the racetrack, he's in the way. So whatever. And a guy that we know, nobody is like a part-time spotter was up there spotting for him. But I know the guy, and he tries to be a nice guy, but he's always in the way. So you do your best to not yell at him. You don't want to yell at these guys. They're doing their best. The drivers are usually idiots. So it's usually not the spotter's fault, but so whatever. So this he stops on pit road, and his car's broke down or whatever. I don't know. He's just in the middle of pit road, and we're coming down. And I said, all right, just watch this guy here. He's stopped out by the grass. And I said, all right, usually as far as spotter and crew chief go, like the spotter will get him to 10 away, and the crew chief will call him into the box from there. So I just did my deal. I said, all right, you're 10 away. Watch this guy on the right. Well, as I say that, we go around him. and the guy just hangs a left and drives straight into our door, and Rex says, "Take us out of the race." So I'm like, "What the hell was that?" But I'm not yelling at anybody. So Dan, the guy that's spotting, is 2 people down from me. So I'm like, I'm not going to yell at Dan. I don't want you to do this. It's not his fault. I'm not going to yell at Dan. I'm just repeating this to myself 1,000 times because I wanted to murder him at this moment. So I get calmed down. I'm just standing there like a couple minutes go by, and Dan leans over to me and goes, "Man, what was Bubba thinking?"
Oh, my God.
Oh, Nelly.
I thank God my buddy Mike Herman was there. I had them truck words you were talking about earlier. A couple of them came out. I told him I was going to throw him off the roof, I think. It got pretty big for a little bit, but I was doing everything I could to keep calm, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Man, what was Bubba thinking?" The grenade went off. It was over after that.
You're thinking about pitting, you mother mucker.
I think that might be the best threat that I've ever heard from a spotter. I
will
will throw your
ass off the roof. You know what that reminds me of?
Yeah.
Somebody launched a Jimmy John's sandwich off the roof at Indy a couple years ago that really pissed NASCAR off.
That wasn't you, was it?
That wasn't a good day. No, I was there. I was on the grassy knoll. I was a witness, but I can neither confirm nor deny what happened.
Nor would we ask you.
I'll say this: was that out of frustration or out of just trolling?
No, the sandwich was out of a guy that can't catch. Is what happened with the sandwich.
Okay. So it's like the whole 9 yards.
One guy cost. I'm not. I guess everybody knows who it was. Timmy Fedor is sponsored by Jimmy John's, and occasionally he brings up some sandwiches from Jimmy John's. And one of the other spotters said, "Hey, Timmy, throw me a sandwich." And like a field goal, right through the uprights, right down from the roof to the ground.
It's like the whole 9 yards where he throws him the beer and he just looks.
Oh, exactly right.
There is, for the ladies that are listening right now, and we know we have a lot of ladies that are listening in.
A couple or two.
Thousands, probably 1,000.
Probably 1,000. But there is a guy code in that at some point in the air, the responsibility transitions from the thrower to the catcher here, and if it's completely out of reach, that's a thrower's issue. But if it's within reasonable reach in the baseball backyard throw and catch game, it is no longer the thrower's issue. This is on the person catching.
The receiver.
Right. So if we go field goal with a whole Jimmy John sandwich, that is on the receiver here.
Yeah.
It was 100% on the receiver. It was, at some point you have to switch over to baseball and just knock it down. I don't care if you catch it, but we're getting hog cards pulled now because this guy can't catch.
Oh, right. This isn't for a touchdown. It's a matter of a sandwich not falling like 150 feet on some poor sap's head.
Hey, at least a Jimmy John
sandwich. It wasn't a poor
free sandwich.
It wasn't a poor sap. It was the president of the racetrack.
Right.
Well, still free sandwich. Come on, man.
Why they got so mad?
No wonder.
He looked hungry to us. I don't know what his problem is.
Right? Yeah. What's the deal?
Blasted with a sandwich.
Oh man.
Oh, crap.
You know what? I have been crapped on by like an owl one time on the top of my head. I'd much rather it be a sandwich. Given all the things that could possibly hit your head, a fresh Jimmy John sandwich.
Well, speaking of like an owl, that's got to be like an oil slick. Considering they barf up all the hard parts.
I'm not going to go deep into this story right here, but I thought a kid had hit me in the back of the head with a rock is what I thought it was. And then I went up and touched it, and it was I didn't get like slightly messed on by a bird. I got crapped on that day. Like this owl had been out drinking all night, and then you know what I mean. Like I said I wasn't going to get into it, and then I just did.
Yeah, but it's funny.
With that, why don't we talk about Kansas coming up? We're going to Kansas. let's go to Kansas, Freddie. I mean, we're so far in the ditch anyway. But why don't you tell us? Is there anything unique about racing at Kansas, or what is the unique stuff? What are you looking forward to? What are y'all getting prepared for racing at Kansas?
Are there hookers?
Yeah. For us, it's a pretty big week. We actually got a new sponsor, Transportation Inc. on board with us this week. So kind of hopefully give them guys a good run. Kansas is kind of similar, real similar to Chicago. So, it's kind of it's not exactly cookie cutter racetrack, but it's, kind of along the same mold of that. So, same thing. You're hoping the line moves around a little bit, creates some good racing. But it's, kind of just another mile-and-a-half deal.
Another mile-and-a-half deal.
The surface is starting to get a little better, it feels like. At least what I'm seeing on the TV.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it should. Hopefully, the problem is, like, as soon as the surfaces start getting better, they repave these racetracks. So, I don't know who we got to pay off to stop doing that, but, they do a good job of bringing in these tire dragons and trying to make racing better. But, hopefully they kind of just leave it alone. We just need, just need tires that wear out is all we really need in the sport. If they can get tires to wear out to where, we have some fall off, like you see it, we talked about earlier tonight, like Atlanta, California, if you get a track where the tire falls off, the racing is 10 times better than if we're all just hauling ass to the middle of the corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, hell, even at Dover, we saw a pretty significant tire fall off, and people were managing tires and making decisions based on that. And it's, it is what we need. That's what we need. And Goodyear is scared absolutely to death that somebody's going to go dive bombing into a 200-mile-an-hour corner and hit the wall, and then we're going to have to answer to what happens next, and they're going to have to answer to what's happened next. So if we're going to slow these cars down, then we need to slow them down in such a fashion that tires still matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't see that happening, but I'm hopeful for it.
Yeah, we'll keep the fingers crossed. Sherwin, I think there he is. There he is.
Uh-oh.
All right, that's our call from Dale Jr. right there to go ahead and make. Well, he didn't call us, obviously, but we can pretend he did, and make some picks here. Freddie, being a fan podcast, we do have to make picks. You can feel free to join or abstain as a competitor. I wouldn't want you to be in the. Oh shoot! I was going to say the
What's
name
the
of the
word?
person and
The position of upsetting your driver or your competitors.
Yeah.
Right. So, Sherwin, take the floor.
I'm going to pick the hometown boy. He hadn't won there yet, and the Fords have been faster than crap. Doesn't matter what racetrack they seem to go to. So I'm Clint Boyer.
There you go. Truex, dude. Truex has had 2 out of the last 3, and he's in. It's not a must-win situation. But boy, how big a statement is it to boy howdy to say, hey, I'm back. But I am rooting for hell, like for Bubba Wallace to go ahead and take that checker. So,
Sure.
What do you maybe this question? What are you looking forward to? What translates into success on the track at Kansas here for Bubba, Freddie?
Honestly, if we can come out and run somewhere between 15th and 20th, that's a great day for us. It's no secret that we're kind of behind on the budget a little bit, and we're doing what we can with what we got. And if you look at the finishes every week and see the guys that are finishing around 15th, 16th, 17th, they're high dollar, Hendrick cars and maybe a Daniel Suarez and a Gibbs car. So that's you're talking probably 5 times the budget we have, on our deal. So anytime we can finish the back half of that top 20 or any better than that, that's like a win for us. So hopefully we can get there. We've been kind of creeping up on it. We've got some new stuff that we brought out at Dover that seemed to go pretty good. So we're going to, try to build off of that. And hopefully we can just, like I said, just kind of be in the race all day long, kind of stay on our lap and hopefully come home with the best finish we can.
Well, I seen a lot of stuff on the YouTube live feed about YRB, Mr. Young, Ryan Blaney, and there were some things that I wanted to ask you. Well, maybe just one thing, since we know Bubba and Ryan spend a lot of time around each other. They're kind of wild asses. Who's a wilder ass, Bubba or YRB?
Blaney, 100%. Not even close.
Oh, he doesn't seem to have a brake pedal.
I shouldn't say that. I should say that they're equally as wild, but one of them can handle a lot better than the other one.
Okay.
Translated well. We got it.
With you on that. With that, Freddie, why don't you? We're gonna let you go at this point, and everybody stick around. We've got Matt Weaver on deck here to give us some insight into how the whole media process works and everything. But Freddie, before then, thank you so much for being on. This has been an absolute blast. We laughed, we learned. That's what we try to do on this show. We've had an awesome time.
And we thought a little bit.
We thought a little bit.
Third thing in there.
Yep. And maybe we'll see you on the or we'll have you on the show again someday.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm down for anything. Next time, I'll make sure I'm drinking something a little better than water.
Right on, brother. It's all good. Yeah. The first time you got to show, it's not like an interview, but the first time people show up and they go, all right, well let's feel this out. Are these guys going to embarrass me? I need to be quick on the hang up on them button, just in case something really hits a ditch or whatever. So no, man, we appreciate you being on. We always have a blast with everybody, and tell Bubba that I said hi, and that would make me really giddy.
No problem, will do. About lap 100, I'll mention it.
Lap 100.
Lap 100. I'll be listening.
Wait till he gets good and mad about something.
Oh, yeah, then mention it. Hey, PTM Podcast said, hey, who the are they? All right, man. Take care.
Well, everybody that's on our wall says thank you, Freddie. They've been watching. We really appreciate it. This is so awesome. It's such a cool part about NASCAR that you guys will say yes to things like this.
It was a pleasure, guys. I hope you guys had a good time.
All right. Take care, brother. We'll talk to you next time.
Have a good one.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Oh, man. Sherwin, always a blast.
Woo!
That was so much fun. I don't know. These spotters are so much fun to talk to.
I had so many more things, and I saw you get giddy about wanting to say something, and I just filed it away.
Yeah. So there's got to be a second time, maybe like with Spotter Brett and everybody else who's come on a second time. Perhaps we didn't offend him too much.
I hope not.
With that, let's kick it over to us earlier. They do that whatever it is.
Time warp. Let's do the time warp again.
We talked to Matt Weaver,
jazz hands,
a little earlier tonight and a little soberer tonight. We had a conversation with him. We'll play this out and then we'll be out. So I don't see any reason to come back on the mic here and have to deal with all of that logistics. So we'll go ahead and say bye to y'all. But
are we done? We're not going to do the outro or any of that? Or
we can. Do you want to?
It's up to you. You're the one that has to manage all the impossibilities behind that technology.
So
let's go ahead and do the social media now. Then
yeah, go for it.
All right. So y'all follow us over at PTM Podcast if you don't already do that. We also have that's on Twitter and on the Instagram. We also have an email address at petmpodcast.com. And you can follow me, Andrew L. Sherwin, Instagram.
On Instagram.
At Pregame Engineer on the Twitter. Rusty's over there.
That Tailgate Mayor on the Twitter. Be sure to follow along. And, we're not saying goodbye. We're just saying, here's us from a little bit earlier. Y'all listen to this. Weaver really gave us some cool insight, and he's up to something this weekend that he gave. I know he's a media guy, but he also kind of gave us the exclusive on what's going on.
The exclusive.
Yeah. So we're like second generation media here.
Yeah. Hashtag a little IndyCar.
Right on.
Maybe.
Right on.
Maybe.
Hashtag Elio Castroneves. I don't know.
Roger Penske, actually.
Might be going a little too far, but here it is. Thank y'all for joining, and if we don't talk soon, we'll talk next week. All right, Sherwin. So, on the line, we've got PETM PhD Matt Weaver, and excited to have him on. He demanded to be on the show tonight, and you know what? When one of the premier motorsports journalists on Earth demands to be on the show, you comply. That's how it goes.
Well,
so.
You make every effort possible to give him an opportunity to speak, for
That's
sure.
right. That's right. So Shorin, why don't you give us the initial brief of why he's demanding to be on the show here, and
Right.
And we're happy to give the floor over to Weaver for some context.
Well, so after the show, or after the race on Sunday, one of the journalists out of Charlotte expressed some personal concerns with the way that timing is managed and availability is managed. And I guess the best way for me to say it is I didn't appreciate her approach, and I probably misbehaved on Twitter. And Matt spoke up and said, I want to talk about this week. Can you make that happen? I was like, absolutely.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Absolutely. Weaver, before you start on anything, we know you're driving right now. You're headed down. We'll let you talk about it if you want to. But what are you drinking on? We got to know.
Oh, we just stopped by the old Starbucks, and I got the Matt Weaver Classic, the Matt Weaver Specialty, Cinnamon Dolce Latte.
Cinnamon Dolce.
Cinnamon
All right.
Dolce Latte. All right. Perfect. You do you.
Yeah.
So with that, Weaver, we're going to give you the floor. You tell us what's up, and give Sherwin the beat down.
Well, first of all, let's not get carried away. Pump the brakes. Matt Weaver didn't demand anything. Matt Weaver is in no position to demand much of anything right now. So, but I did want to clarify some things because I know that Jenna had started the controversy here on Sunday afternoon and did it somewhat aggressively. But I think that a lot of people's responses indicated a lack of understanding or a lack of institutional knowledge about the process and how some of our post-race procedure kind of works. And listen, one, let me say right off the bat that I'm not speaking for anyone else. I don't want to speak for Jenna or for Bob or for Nate or for Jeff or anyone that routinely covers the sport. We all have our different approaches and nuances and experiences. So all I can speak to is my interaction with drivers and the sanctioning body and some of the processes. But the main thing that I wanted to clarify in having this conversation is that I just wanted to make sure fans understood what we do after a race and how it's probably a little bit different than their expectations, but also the value of what we do. Because the one tweet that I saw back to Jenna or to me or to you guys was that, well, they did TV, so that should be enough. And that's the main thing that I take umbrage with, because I think fans think that if they do TV, we just write things based on what they say to the TV partner. And sometimes people even tell me, oh, well, I watched the broadcast. That's not what the driver said. And they have no idea that we're having extra conversations or extra interviews. So the three things that I want to do in having this conversation is, one, I want to explain why there is some frustration amongst those of us on Traveling Media Corps. Two, I want to educate people on what it is we do and what that process looks like. And, man, I'm getting so wired up right now I can't remember the third one. Three for Dale was I want people to understand why we matter, what the value is, because a lot of people said, well, if you don't like how this works or, you know, how you get access, you can go do something else. And this is not a lack of appreciation for the job. It's just that some of us feel like we're not giving the resources to do our jobs in a way that benefits the fans. And so the fans were being very critical of the media center as a whole. And I think that if they just had a better understanding, just a little bit of what the process is, then I think some of their criticisms would be diluted. So I don't know how you guys want to go about asking the questions or how you want me to go about explaining this, but just fire away, and hopefully I can shed a light on what we do here.
Well, I think one of the things that is, and I don't think NASCAR's alone in this as a professional sport, is you're a fan of a competitor or a team, and you're a fan of some of the people that write, in NASCAR, the writing job tends to fall much more globally. Like, you don't have a Ryan Blaney beat writer the way you have an Atlanta Braves beat writer or a Chicago Cubs beat writer. It's just, that it doesn't, the way the whole system's built doesn't really work around that. So you end up with these opportunities to find contentious relationships with people that, at least from my perspective, are not helping what's happening. I understand there is frustration with not having, the tools you need to do your job, which in a lot of ways and a lot of times is actual people. You need people to talk to find out what happened, what was the deal. So I think if you could speak to that, that would probably be a good start.
Yeah, so Jenna's boiling point was not something that was sudden, was not a knee-jerk reaction. This has been something that's been boiling all year, and this has been a talking point amongst those of us in the media center for a couple of years now. The preface here is there are some drivers who are always accommodating, very good with their time, make themselves available. Jimmy Johnson had taken some criticism or felt like he was being criticized by Nate's column that he wrote a couple of months ago. And Jimmy's a good one. So I agree with Nate that, Jimmy, first-class professional. But there are certain drivers, and it's been this way now for several years. It's a race. It's a race after the race, to where as soon as they get out of the car, they make a beeline to the driver owner's lot where they can get changed and get out of Dodge. So let me kind of paint the picture here. So I walk out to pit road, final 5 or 10 laps of a race, depending on where we are, and you start to look at the storylines, and you start to make kind of a mental note of who you want to grab, who you want to talk to, and it's total chaos, because you usually have to commit to 1 or 2 people that you're going to talk to, and you're usually cutting deals with other reporters like me, Jerry Jordan, Kelly Crandall, Caleb Whistler. We have a really good system to where we'll get back to the media center and we'll say, well, who do you have? It's like trading Pokemon cards. Well, I've got Kevin Harvick and you've got Clinton Boyer, so I'll give you one in exchange for the other. And that's kind of how we go about trying to get people, because once you commit to your one driver and the amount of time it takes, usually 3 to 4 minutes, to have the conversation, you turn around and pit road has become a ghost town, because people will do either their post-television interview, and then they'll do a couple of questions for the beat writers as a follow-up, and then they're gone. And that's not to criticize the drivers or the sanctioning body or anyone. That's just how it's been for a while now. And so you usually get your one guy. And there's no chance for all the writers to get together in advance and come up with a game plan to make sure that everyone gets their story told, because we're trying to figure out on a fly who we're going to talk to, because it's a pretty good bet that most drivers are not going to stick around. So one of the big complaints that I see from fans is that, well, there were no stories written about such and such driver. And, it's not because we're just choosing not to write about them. Sometimes the driver doesn't stick around, or sometimes the driver does stick around, but no one is talking to them because a bunch of reporters decided on their own to go chase one other person first. But you've got like a 5-minute window to try to talk to every one of the 40 drivers that you feel like is a story. And it's total pandemonium. And complicating matters is that NASCAR will bring in, outside of the winner, they'll bring in 2 other drivers. Usually it's second place and the best story. Well, the problem there is that they bring these drivers into the media center while most of us are outside trying to chase drivers to get those stories. And then the drivers get upset at us and at NASCAR because there's no one inside the media center to ask them questions. But then we get back to the media center and we look at the transcripts, and there was 1 or 2 questions asked. So now we can't write the stories on the guys they brought into the media center, and we might have missed people on pit road. So I know there's a lot of moving parts to the story that I'm trying to explain here, but the main thing I want fans to understand is that we have a 5-minute window, more often than not, to try to talk to everyone that we deem as being a story, and it takes about 5 minutes to go through a line of questions, and once you've talked to that one driver, you turn around and the rest of the field is gone. So the PR reps do a really good job. The manufacturer reps ask questions to try to help us out, so we have a really good system there. But sometimes you don't ask the questions that fans feel like should have been asked. And I'll say this too, the Ford, Chevy, and Toyota reps, they're probably not going to ask the tough questions, the controversial questions, because it's not part of their job description. So, it's just a very tough thing. And, the media and NASCAR, they've been going back and forth now for well over a year to try to figure out the best way to go about figuring out a new model. And I can tell you that NASCAR is working right now. There was an email sent to us today that had some proposals, and we're going to have some conversations. So this is by no means a criticism. No one's blaming anyone, at least on my end. I just want the fans to understand that this was not one reporter just, blowing up and criticizing people. This has been a long-standing thing for multiple years, to where we, as the primary storytellers of the sport, don't have all the access, all the tools, all the time that we need to really tell the stories that fans care the most about. And not only do we suffer because we're not doing the job to the best of our potential, but the fans suffer too because they're not being told the stories they want most despite our best effort.
Boy, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, so
So
perspective
if there's any questions, sorry to cut you off, but if there's any questions about the process or the procedure, that's the main thing that I want people to know is what this looks like for us. So at least whenever a fan gets on Twitter and has something to say back to a reporter or a driver or whatever, I just want them to understand what it looks like on pit road when everyone's trying to do their respective jobs, whatever that job might be.
Yeah, I can only imagine that at a track as big as Talladega and all the intermediates that, drivers can disappear pretty easily while you're running around pit road trying to get the story that you most want. And then at the same time, as big as they are, it's that much harder to get back to the media center because who knows if you were interviewing the guy that was in pit stall 40 and you got to get back to the media center in time for the winter, that might be a challenge.
So let me give you a good example just to talk about Talladega. So post-race at Talladega, I committed to Kurt Busch. So I thought Kurt Busch was probably, the biggest story because he was leading off the last corner, ran out of gas. And Kurt has a bit of a temper sometimes, so that there's the potential for Kurt to say what he ultimately said, which was criticism towards race control. So I committed to Kurt Busch the moment that the cars came down pit road. NASCAR used to let the drivers park the cars in the garage. That was much more challenging. At least now NASCAR mandates that the drivers have to park on pit road. That way the officials can check the lug nuts. But it also lets them all be gathered in one area for us to talk to them. But Kurt doesn't really stick around. He does TV. He sticks around for TV because you have to do TV. But the moment he's done with TV, he starts walking towards the garage. So I believe it was me, Jerry Jordan, the Ford rep, and there was another reporter with us. But we walk and talk with Kurt for a good 4 minutes, enough to get halfway through the garage. But consider that I committed to Kurt the moment he got out of the car, so I couldn't talk to anyone else. So by the time I get done talking to Kurt, I'm now halfway in the garage because he didn't want to stick around because he was pretty aggravated and do media. He wanted to walk away right then and there. So in the 3, 4, 5 minutes that it took for me and Jerry and Ford to talk to Kurt, I had to go run back to pit road hoping that somebody would be there. And the only driver that was still there doing media by the time I got back to pit road was Martin Truex. So the two people that I got, and you saw that in the stories that I wrote on Sunday, was Kurt Busch and Martin Truex because I didn't have the opportunity to really talk to anyone else. Now, fortunately, I was able to work with some of my cohorts and friends, and we did the collectible trading card game where it's like, what driver do you have? I've got Kurt. But it's the wild, wild west. And you got to remember, there are 40 drivers. There are about 15 to 20 of us who write, not necessarily radio, but do the written stories. And we're not going to get every single driver. And the manufacturer reps, they're not going to get every single driver. And it's just really tough. And people say that, well, it's not any different in any other sport. I can tell you that's bullshit. That is absolute bullshit, because I've covered NFL games before. I've covered NCAA basketball games back when I was a student reporter. I've been to 4 Formula One races now. And let me tell you something. For F1 to be the pinnacle of motorsports, these guys are made available every single day. These guys are being made available on Friday, on Saturdays, and post-race on Sunday. So for the fans who say, and I don't want to make this a pissing contest on the fans, I just want fans to understand, but for the fans who say, well, this is no different than any other sport, that's just wrong.
I'm surprised.
Athletes are made super available
F1,
in front of their locker rooms, and that's just not the case here.
Yeah, I'm surprised that F1 is, I'll just say it, better. Because we think of NASCAR as very accessible when it comes to drivers and stuff, especially when compared, as fans, that is. Being active on Twitter, being around, you can always get pictures with them and stuff, as opposed to, I think, other sports where I think in a lot of other sports too, fans are separated by the arena from these stars. And it's hard to, I get a hold of them, where I feel like in NASCAR, you can get pit passes. You can walk around the pit beforehand. You can see everybody. You can see the cars. You can see the people, all that stuff. So it's that's interesting that F1 is more accessible to the media folks than NASCAR is.
Yeah, so for the sake of comparison, I just explained how the NASCAR post-race setting was for Talladega. For F1, all the drivers have to go to their paddock area. If they're eliminated early, you can get them at the paddock area, plus their post-race press conferences. IndyCar, now granted, IndyCar, they don't have the same sort of demands that F1 drivers and NASCAR drivers do. But I love covering IndyCar races because these guys make themselves, and to their credit, make themselves extremely available. I mean, I remember the first time that I covered an IndyCar race, I had talked to a couple of drivers on pit road, and there was Dario Franchitti just sitting on the pit box talking to his team. And I was thinking to myself, being a NASCAR guy, that you're telling me that Dario, the championship leader and at the time a 3-time champion, is just hanging out. And I nervously walked up to him saying, hey, Dario, can I have a couple of minutes, thinking that he would be like a NASCAR driver and chew me out and say, no, I've already done TV, or no, I've already done my media. And Dario is just like, yeah, man, what you want to know? And that's the one thing that aggravates a lot of us the most in NASCAR land, is that drivers will say, I've already done my media, or I've already done TV. And
weird, yeah.
It's just challenging, and especially me. I do some short track racing. I do IndyCar. I've done some F1, and I can tell you, when you compare it to IndyCar, short track, and even Formula One, that NASCAR media environment is the toughest to get stories, and it's the toughest to tell stories. And it's not just the drivers too. Jenna's point wasn't so much about the drivers on Sunday. She was talking about executives too. We had questions about race control, and the point that was made was these people, they're already on their planes headed halfway to Charlotte, and we're still in the media center trying to figure out NASCAR's perspective, and there's no one from NASCAR who really has the authority to speak to us outside of just giving us a statement. And so it's just, and again, this isn't me complaining. I don't want anyone to hear this and go, well, Weaver's complaining too. To me, I do this because you guys know I love racing. I cover all forms of racing because I love being in the environment and I love telling the stories. But the challenge is it's just more difficult
to tell the stories of NASCAR from a driver and sanctioning body standpoint than any other racing environment that I go to. And that's what we want to see changed in the next year or so.
Yeah, well, I think one of the reasons why you'll put up with me being whatever my personality is, both in the public space and on Twitter, is because we love it too, but we don't have your perspective, which is why we enjoy so much you coming here and bringing it to us.
Absolutely, and that makes total sense too. Getting that perspective, and that's a shame. Shoot, Ed down at AMS. I know Ed Clark. I guess he only has the one race, but he's hanging out the whole time afterwards and gave us time and pulled us aside. We've talked about that many a times. I know the executives and whoever else have to do this week on week, and so do the drivers. But that's also their job too, is to do that. So that's a new perspective for me, Sherwin. I don't know about you, but that's new to me. That I guess the horse trading thing that's going on. The fact that you walk back and there's nobody left back there, everybody's jumping on. I don't think it was a matter of. It sounds like it wasn't a matter of the fact that they're on planes. They could have been in jalopies driving back. It's just the fact that they're gone.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not there.
Yeah. So with that, Weaver, we'll start letting you go. But before we do, tell us about where in the world you're going.
Yeah, I have the coolest job in the world, and that's why I repeatedly want to say that I'm not complaining about the job. I'm not fussing about anything that I do, because this weekend is another example of, I live a really cool life, and I don't take it for granted. I just want to make sure that I do the best job that I can by the fans. But selfishly speaking, I'm doing something that to me is just plain cool. Shell, the oil company Shell, reached out to me a couple of weeks ago, and they basically said, look, we've got Bud Denker from Penske Corporation, Elio Castroneves and his wife are going to come down and visit this offshore oil rig, the Stones oil rig, which is about 2 hours south of New Orleans in the Gulf of Mexico. And they wanted me to come down and tour the facility with Elio and Bud and do some helicopter crash emergency training, underwater type training at their facility in Kenner, Louisiana. So yeah, I'm going to hang out with Elio and Team Penske and Shell for the next 2 days, and go through some helicopter crash emergency training and kind of go explore a oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico.
Is there going to be video of this?
Oh, hell yeah, there's going to be video.
You're going to have to coach them through, you're going to have a different set of training than Helio, because he's, 3'8"?
Elio's going to demand to be on the PTM podcast.
Elio's tough, man. Elio's going to have to show me a thing or two, because his physical fitness is second to none. And I'll be honest here, the last year or so, I've been working my tail off so much with Auto Week related stuff, trying to get short track scene launched. My physical fitness has taken a nosedive. I was in really good shape, the best shape of my life a year ago. But I've been working basically 2 jobs with the actual job, my own company. And when you're working 2 jobs, you can't take care of yourself like you need to. So my only reservation about doing this tomorrow is that we're going to be going through this, underwater training thing with Elio, and Elio is a super athlete. And 1 year later, I'm pretty far removed from being a super athlete. So he's going to put me to shame big time.
Awesome. Weaver, always appreciate you being on the show. Had a blast, and appreciate the perspective.
Anytime, guys. As you know, love being on the pod with you dudes, and hopefully we'll do it again here in the next couple of weeks, maybe before Miami or something. We can talk about the championship.
Ooh, that sounds good. We'll go ahead and pencil that in.
All right. Well, there he is, Matt Weaver. Thanks again, and we'll catch him next time.